Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. It is Ed Matthews with the Real Estate Underground. Thank you so much for joining us again today. With me today is Randy Langenderfer. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to meet you. And you are with InvestArk. And I know you've got an education program coming up as well, but we'll get into that. But first off, why don't you tell the folks who may not know who you are and what you do for a living, and then we'll get into it.
Ed, first of all, thanks so much for being on the program. It's my privilege to be here and look forward to building into some of your audience. So Randy Langenderfer, Houston, Texas today. My wife, when she hears me talking these, says, you always talk too much about real estate. You don't talk about your personal families. Married, 4 children, 5 grandchildren. They're spread all over the country. We enjoy that. I left the corporate world a year ago to concentrate full time on real estate. And I started my journey a decade ago, being a hard money lender and single family flips, and progressed when I moved to Houston, Texas for business reasons. It was really propelled by me. And I think it resonates with a lot of people when I found out in the Great Recession that I could lose my job at any time. And I had a pretty good executive job. And it was just an aha moment for me that you need to find another income. It was just a wake up call, and nothing that I had done, just all economic based. And I got nothing. I fell in love with multifamily, got involved doing limited partnership investments on my own, educated myself, joined a couple of educational groups, did my first GP in 18. Fast forward today, I think I'm a GP in 1,300 doors. I'm an LP in several thousand doors. I still invest in other people's deals. And I just really like this asset class. So I've got a large portion of my net worth in multifamily across the country and many people's different deals.
So let's break that down. So when you say multifamily, obviously there's different subclasses. Where do you tend to focus?
My target audience would be the Sunbelt across the southern half of the U.S.
Yep.
Not very original, but it's where the economics are going in America from income growth and population growth. So today I focus on the Sunbelt, 100 doors or better. I'm not real hung up on a specific asset class, A, B, or C. I've done all of them. I own an A class in Dallas, Texas. I own a C class in Tucson, Arizona, probably a B plus in Greenville, South Carolina, and another A class here in Houston. I look for a story, something that we can add value to, something that we can give our investors a healthy return on.
Right. And so when you say healthy return, when you're evaluating a property, and what are some of the qualities, some of the things that you're looking for that kind of pop up on your radar? There may be something here.
Yeah. So when we're underwriting and look at properties, I try to say it's a minimum of anywhere from 7 to 9% a year cash on cash return. Target a minimum of 15% IRR. And if you got those two, you're looking at something that's probably going to double their money in about 5 years. Right. Maybe a 1.9 equity multiplier in that range. You're just looking for something that you can make happen and also have high probability of success around. So,
okay. And so when you're looking at the various classes and you look at a story, give me a scenario what kind of story are you looking at? Is it?
So I give you the two extremes. We bought a class A property, a small 60 unit. I said I look at 100 doors, but we bought a class A 60 unit 2 years ago here in Houston that was just nestled in the middle of hundreds of other doors in a city called Spring Branch. It's a suburb of Houston, Texas. And it was just nestled there. That was poorly managed and had some great upside on the rents. And so that's the kind of story there that I was looking forward to. It had just been mismanaged. And the other one was, the other extreme was the Class C property in Tucson, Arizona, 199 doors built in 1969. So that's an old one.
Yep.
But it had been had by the same owner for probably 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And with all due respect, he was just fat, dumb, and happy. He had very little debt on the place, and he just took the rents every month and was very, and that's just a hot market. And so we are able to make significant, like $200-$300 a month rent bumps with just modifying and upgrading the units and putting some capital improvements around the exterior of the property. And I have a business partner there that is deep in the Tucson market and has all the property management and vendor relationships that I didn't have. And so that's the story there that just worked out beautifully.
Okay. And
that's my best performing property right now, I'll say.
I'll bet. So do you buy these with agency debt, or do you do seller financing, or like what's a typical financing scenario?
That scenario is obviously the government, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are the gold standards, which you always shoot for. If you bought something in 2021 or 22, you probably bought it, you did buy in variable rate debt because that's the only way deals were getting done. So I have some of that in my mix too. But sure, try to do agency debt. And, classically you're trying to get as much leverage as you can. Anymore, that's only 65%.
Right.
So you're having to raise more money, 35% of the purchase price plus capital improvements to really turn our assets around. So numbers are getting bigger, and that requires a team of individuals who most likely take down property today, unless you're blessed with 7 figures to be able to invest in something like this and put it all in the line.
And so when you are taking down a property, and what is your process in terms of onboarding that property? Because obviously speed is a factor here when you're initially taking over a building. So I'm curious, what's your process when you take over?
Before you even get there though, you got to have a good team together to, as I said, raise the money.
Yep.
And today you're raising multiple millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars for properties today. So you got to have the right team together. Generally, that takes more than one person. And to have the coverage on the loan requirements for the lender requires more than one. So have your team in place. Paramount in that, though, is that you've got property management lined up and ready to go in that local submarket. So I said I'm in Tucson, Dallas, Houston, and Greenville, North Carolina, South Carolina, South Carolina. And it's imperative that the property management there is set up and ready to go and ready to take over. So you've got to have relationships with property management. And for your investors who are perhaps new to this, there's a little nugget that either you've got to have the relationship or your partners have got to have the relationship. And you want to make sure that they've got expertise in the asset class you're looking at. So I'm not going to find a Class A property manager for my Class C in Tucson. I want somebody that's in Tucson and got expertise in the C bandwidth versus somebody that everybody wants to focus on the new high-rise multifamily Class A.
Yeah. So let me dig into that for a second. How come?
Well, real estate is local and it's a different type of tenant, right? Imagine that high-rise in downtown Phoenix, as an example, is going to attract an entirely different kind of client than a 1969 build in Tucson, Arizona. Of course, the markets between Tucson and Phoenix are different.
Night and day.
And Tucson tends to be much more of a blue collar working class neighborhood. So you have an entirely different tenant base there that you want to make sure that your property manager knows. You simply too want to make sure that they have vendor relationships and that they can readily call up roofers, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, landscaping, all those. And there may be some, but a lot of multifamily vendors will specialize in classes too. They tend to do the older ones or the newer ones.
Yep.
And so you just have you mitigate risk by doing that, your investor money and your money, and you're just going to get off to a lot quicker start, as you said.
Yeah.
The other one we didn't talk about is I also like to take a look at property management, what kind of back house software are they running. Wasn't as important back in the day when I got started, but today I love the fact for most of them, the ones I manage, I can get online and I can see occupancy day to day. I can see delinquencies. I can see room turn. Yes, we still have weekly calls with the property management company, but I love the transparency and availability to get in and see the numbers yourself.
Right on. All right. And so I'm curious, you have holdings spread out pretty well across a bunch of different markets. I'm really curious about how you've seen insurance costs impact your operation.
Oh, you had to bring that up, didn't you? Yeah, it's a leading question, but yeah, especially in the Houston area, we're getting killed. We are just getting killed. I remember my first property I did was a multifamily in Port Arthur, Texas, which for your listening audience is right on the Gulf. It was literally, the property was 3 miles off the Gulf. And this was back in 18, and we were just flabbergasted that we had to pay $350 a door for insurance.
Good old
Today,
days.
yeah, those were the good old days. We thought that was a lot. Today you're spending, it depends, but your relationships and stuff in the property, but anywhere from $1,200 a door to $1,700 a door across the Sunbelt, specifically in Houston, Florida, the Gulf Coast states, Carolinas, depending on where you're situated at.
Right.
Yeah. And the other one we face in Texas, huge up battle, is taxes. Texas is a state that reappraises the property values every year. So we can see some wild swings in property valuations. We're starting to see a downward trend now a little bit, but that and insurances are the two biggest single line items in property management in Houston. So we do the things. We have tax contestant. We contest the taxes every year in Texas, and we hire consultants, professional to help us do that. That's one area. On the insurance side, we try to coordinate with, my guy in Tucson has several properties, so we put it under our master plan there, and we get a little bit of a break there.
Yep.
And the other one is on back to taxes. That's one of the properties that I mentioned is a different or a story to tell. We took down a property here in Houston, really big property last year with several partners. And the value play there was it became tax abated. Mm-hmm. So that means we didn't have to pay any real estate taxes. There was a small affordability clause that we had to provide 60% of the units at 80% of AMI, average median income.
Yep.
But day one, we took $2 million out of the expense side.
Wow.
So that's a huge win. And I'm a numbers guy.
Right.
It doesn't take much intelligence to understand that all you got to do is occupy it and you're going to do fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just need human beings.
You just need heads and beds, as we say.
Exactly. All right. And in terms of insurance, I heard you say something that we've taken advantage of in terms of a master policy. And there are some savings there, but what are some of the other things that you're doing to mitigate those variable costs?
The master plan, the master policy, quite honestly, taking higher deductibles too.
Yeah.
And shopping it annually. We're shopping it annually, just trying to see. The problem in Texas and most of the Gulf states is a lot of the carriers have left the market. So there's a dwindling supply of carriers and supply demand. When supply goes down, when demand goes down, you have a higher price. And so we're struggling with that. But there's not a lot of creativity there that you can implement other than pray you don't have a claim either, because you really don't want to turn in a claim unless you have to. So making sure you model in reserves as well to your underwriting so that you can take a $10,000 hit if you have to, or maybe even a $20,000 hit.
So given the higher, I'm interested in this. So given the higher deductibles and that putting pressure on your reserves, typically in the past, what have you carried for reserves on a monthly or a per unit? And how has that changed now that insurance and taxes have really popped?
Now you're going to stress the memory banks.
That's okay. Take your time.
I don't have the exact numbers, but I know what we did is
I'm just trying to illustrate for folks out there that there are a number of ways to combat these types of expenses increase.
I don't have that exact number in my head, but what I can tell you what we did is the other thing in terms of it was raising and a lot of the carriers here require you to have at least a minimum of 2% for any named storm or wind damage, because we get hurricanes. We have a lot of hailstorms in the Dallas area. Our property's there, so there's no negotiating for it. The other big thing we did is we took a look at, a lot of times operators will cover the whole property with deductibles. And seldom do you have damage to the entire property. You may have damage, I think like the one I had, a fire. Fire very seldom happens, all the units. Took out 28 of the 130. So the point of it is you have a deductible per building versus per property. It has a cap per property, but you do it per building otherwise. And that's a way also to minimize your premium, small way. But if you get hailstorm or hail damage or something like that, that's not going to affect it because that's a named storm. So generally you want to, a little hack there that I learned several years ago is you want to have insurance by per building versus the entire property.
Interesting. Okay. Noted. All right. So I know that you and one of your partners are about to release, if it's not already live, an education series. And I'm sure some of these strategies and tactics are contained in them. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So I have a partner and I that we've both been in the business for about 10 years combined. I don't know, 10, 20 units, properties, I should say, combined. Been doing it for a while, enjoyed the asset class, really want to give back to people. So we have been participants in ourselves in some of the large national multifamily groups.
Yep.
And there are many, and I'm not saying anything bad about them. They're all very good. But what we found is they tend to be one size fits all. And so we started what we have affectionately referred to as the Multifamily Maestros, which is Tony Castronova and myself. And we've started an educational program. And if you allow me, I'd like to offer anybody in your listening audience, if you want to try it for a month for $197, contact me offhand at Multifamily Maestros, all one word.com. There's a discover call on there button and contact me and I'll show you how we can sign up. Get you access to our 30 plus online courses, which is everything from how to deal with brokers to underwriting to where to find investors, advertising, etc. And we have weekly group calls and you get our complete Rolodexes if you need access to vendors for any given item. And primarily though, we're making a few bucks off of it, but primarily we really want to just give back. We price the whole thing if you were to buy the whole package at a much reduced price than some of the large national houses. So
excellent. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm sure our listeners will appreciate it as well. And I certainly will be checking it out. So with that, let's head over to the final four and start to land this plane. Yeah. Brace yourself. Here they go. So the first one, I want to know about what makes you tick. So if you could finish this sentence for me. My purpose is.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A motivated seller just filled out your web form. If you call back within 5 minutes, you're nearly 4 times more likely to get that seller appointment. But delay your follow-up by even just 10 minutes? Forget it. You're toast. Ella Vista Connect calls that lead back in 60 seconds, qualifies them, and schedules your meeting. Find out how much slow follow-up is costing you. Free calculator at ellavista.com/underground.
My purpose is to serve my Lord and to serve my family. If I can be so simple and naive, I'm a person of faith, so that's very important to me. I mentioned I'm a father and a grandfather, and so I've often said I've thought about this enough because maybe I'm older than you, but when my kids stand over my grave someday, I hope they don't say, "Here lies Dad. He was a great real estate investor."
Right. Right.
It's really important, and that's what I do, and I enjoy it, but that's not the most important thing in my life.
Yeah, it's just an enabler for all the other wonderful things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And not simple at all. So that's admirable, actually. Next question. So I'm always curious about leaders like yourself, especially when you've had a corporate career and then have moved on to join or to create a business of your own. What is the best advice you've ever gotten? And I'm also curious about who gave it to you.
The best advice I ever got, one of my mentors, Rod Khalif. Hopefully your audience is listening. It's very simple for him, but and I'll explain it afterwards. But his thing is just take action, take massive action, he says. And so Rod's a very animated individual and a great guy, which my corporate background didn't really lend to at first. But my point of it is when I wrote my first check for $50,000, my hand was shaking.
Should.
I remember from the corporate world of telling you that there are people that they ready, aim, fire. And my weakness is I'm an analytical type, MBA, CPA. And so I ready, aim, and then I fire. And you've probably known some, I'll call them other types that fire, aim, ready, go in reverse order. But you have to know your weaknesses and you have to know your strengths. And that advice is, but you got to do something. Right. And so to your listening audience, find a property to invest in, buy a single family home, to flip. You can't analyze it forever. Pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Pull a small trigger the first time. Give you some comfort and some wins, but you got to do something.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm a reader, and I find that entrepreneurs in particular, but also leaders in general, tend to be readers. And I'm curious about how you take in information. There's so many different ways these days: physical books, audio books, webinars, whatever. And I'm also curious about who you pay attention to these days. And I'm always expand my book list.
I'm not a great reader. Regrettably, I do read, but I'm not a great reader. I am an avid podcast listener, an avid meetup person, try to go to at least 2 conferences every year, continuing my network, continuing to learn. But I think really for the newer person, podcasts are they were around 10 years ago when I got started. At least I didn't know about them. They're just an easy way to absorb knowledge when I'm in the car and have no other thing to do other than focus and listen.
Right.
No distractions, put it that way. So I really like podcasts, and I've got several favorite ones. Meetups, local meetups, as I said. Books, you can see over my shoulder here. There's a nice pile of books there that I do read. I've read a lot of things. Profit First is a book that I'm reading right now that I really like. If you haven't read that one, I'm sure you're in Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, sure.
Howard Questions to Ask Yourself in Life. And then I got other books, not just on real estate and business stuff, but on spiritual matters and honing that skill as well that I focus on. I would say the greatest book of all is the Bible to read. Try to look at that each and every day and take a snapshot of that. But you're right. Leaders are lifelong learners. I hope I'm in the category.
You certainly are. Yeah. It's different for everybody, right? I am an avid podcast listener as well, because I just can't listen to the news when I'm driving because it makes me a little bit crazy and I develop a twitch. So regardless of the political spectrum, I think they're all crazy. They make me crazy and I won't let them. So I listen to podcasts instead. And
I can echo that.
Yeah. And on top of that, I like learning, but I always start out the beginning of the year. I'm like, I'm going to read a book a week, and then it becomes a book every 2 weeks. And then I'm getting a book done every 3 weeks. And that's usually where I settle in. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. And if I get one done every 3 to 4 weeks, I'm a happy guy.
If that puts you on 10, 12, 15 a year. And I think you're in a minority. I think you're in a minority, a high minority of Americans who read that much. So.
I cheat too. I use apps like Blinkist and others to buttress those 10 or 12 as well. Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Last question. I want you to define success. What does success mean to you?
That's another great question. I have never been asked that, Ed. For me, success, I think, having been out of the corporate world, I used to put it all on money. It's not on money for me anymore. That's because I was still working for the man. To me, success is doing what you want to do and having the financial wherewithal to do it.
Love that. Amen.
Be it that traveling the world or scouring up new properties to buy in Houston, Texas, or anything in between. My brother's retired. He loves chasing his grandkids around.
Yeah.
Doing what you want to do and having the finances to do it.
Right on. Love that. Couldn't agree more. Freedom is a wonderful thing. Time freedom is a wonderful thing.
I never appreciated more, and my father told me, until you step away from the rat race.
Yeah.
I talk about the budget reports and the performance evaluations and all those things I used to have to fill out, add zero value to almost anything, to doing what you want to do, which in my case happens to be multifamily real estate.
Yeah. I was talking a few weeks ago to an old boss of mine, a good friend of mine now. And we were laughing about every once in a while, I'll have a flashback of, in my world, I was in sales and marketing, and they do quarterly business reviews in the technology world. And he would say, hey, I need your QBR numbers. And I would literally, even to this day, I get hives thinking about having through that process. And I've been out of the corporate world for 7-8 years now. Yeah, I do not miss it at all.
And that's no disrespect to anybody that's still in it. Just if that's what you like.
Hey, it's you got to do what you got to do. But I didn't realize how much I didn't miss it until I wasn't doing it.
So you walk away.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah. And I don't miss it. So let me ask you, when not talking about real estate, it sounds like you have a rich life outside of this world. What do you like to do?
I said that I have 5 grandkids and I live in Houston. My kids live in Seattle, Washington, Cleveland, Ohio, and Asheville, North Carolina. So we spend a lot of time traveling to see them and grandkids. I would say I'm an avid golfer, but that's probably a stretch. I really enjoy the game. And since I've been doing my own thing, I try to play once, twice a week. And that is sometimes a lot of fun. So that takes up a lot of time. And then that's amazing. When you don't have a schedule, your wife tends to fill it in for you.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
It's all good though. It's all good. So those and just spending more time. One of my tasks for this year, 2024 yet, is to volunteer at Meals on Wheels. My parents were both recipients of that in their latter years. And I just want to support that mission because it's really cool. And that takes about a half day a week. So it's not anything tragic. So.
And it's amazing the impact you can have on people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Randy, if people want to learn more about InvestArk or Multifamily Maestros or you in individually, what's the best way to get in touch?
Thanks. I'm on all the social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Randy Langenderfer. You can find me there. The contacts are in there. Invest-ARK is the webpage, invest-ark.com. There's a book a call there. Happy to talk to anybody. Love to chat with you if you're interested in some mentoring. Multifamily Maestros, all one word.com, multifamilymaestros.com. There's a discover call on there too, that you can reach out to me. Love to chat with anybody in the listening audience about anything real estate. Matter of fact, anything else, I don't care.
All right.
Get to know you.
Excellent. Randy Langenderfer, thank you so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and learn from you. So thank you.
And the pleasure has been mine. As I said, you have a great weekend.
You too, sir.
All righty.
This has been the Real Estate Underground. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, Undergrounders, remember your real estate journey begins with a simple step forward. Now get to it. Bye for now.